dictators work.
Whoa there, hold on a second. That's a pretty bold statement, don't you think?
Well, maybe, but that's what one very famous thinker actually believed.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Who are we talking about here?
Thomas Hobbes.
Hobbes, huh? Okay, so remind me, who was Hobbes again?
He was this English philosopher back in the 1600s.
1600, so quite a while ago. What was going on back then?
Well, picture England in total chaos, like a civil war raging. And it really messed him up. Like, it totally shaped his view of, well, everything.
Yikes, yeah. I can see how living through something like that would make you think differently about the world. So what did he believe?
He believed that without a strong ruler with total power, everything falls apart.
So he's pro-dictator, just straight up.
He called this all-powerful ruler the Leviathan.
The Leviathan, like some kind of monster.
Well, he described it as this figurehead, this ultimate power that everyone had to answer to.
Okay, so kind of like a king, but with maybe even more power.
Yeah, and it didn't even have to be a single person. He said it could be an assembly or a group. But the key thing was no splitting power, or else back to the chaos we go.
Got it. So basically, according to Hobbes, power sharing equals bad times.
Exactly. He believed that the natural state of humanity was this brutal, everyone for themselves kind of thing. He called it the state of nature.
Oh, I've heard of that. So basically, imagine Lord of the Flies, but on a global scale.
Yeah, pretty much. And the only way out of this state of nature was to agree to a social contract.
A contract, meaning like a deal, like we all sign something.
Not literally, it's more like this unspoken agreement we make to give up some freedoms in exchange for security.
Okay, so trading some freedom for safety. Sounds kind of like what we do in modern society too, right? Like we give up the freedom to just drive wherever we want in exchange for the safety of traffic laws.
Exactly. And Hobbes thought the best way to make sure everyone kept up their end of the bargain was to have this absolute ruler, this Leviathan, keeping everyone in check.
I see where he's coming from with the whole chaos thing, but it still feels a bit extreme, doesn't it? Like, what about things like individual rights and freedoms? Didn't he think those were important?
Well, that's where things get a little controversial. Hobbes was really focused on order and stability, even if it meant sacrificing some individual liberties. He even said that any government, even a bad one, was better than no government at all.
So in his view, it's like better to have a dictator than to have anarchy. Seems kind of bleak.
Yeah, it definitely rubbed some people the wrong way, even back then.
I bet. Were there any other philosophers who had different ideas about all this?
Oh, absolutely. You had guys like John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau who were all about individual rights and limited government.
I've heard of Locke. Didn't he have something to do with the American Declaration of Independence?
Yep, that's him. He believed everyone's born with certain rights, like the right to life, liberty, and property, and that the government's job is to protect those rights, not trample all over them.
Right, that makes a lot more sense to me. So basically Locke was saying, we have rights and the government can't just take them away. What about Rousseau? What was his deal?
Rousseau was a bit more radical. He believed that people are naturally good, but are corrupted by society. And he was a big fan of democracy and the idea that the people should have the power to govern themselves.
Interesting. So three very different takes on how society should be run. You've got Hobbes with his Leviathan, Locke with his individual rights, and Rousseau with his people power.
It's almost like they're playing rock, paper, scissors with their philosophies, right?
I like that analogy. But it kind of makes you think, doesn't it? Like, there's no one right answer to how we should govern ourselves. It's all about what we prioritize and what we're willing to give up.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Do we value security above all else, even at the cost of our freedoms? Or do we fight for individual liberty, even if it means a little more chaos?
Big questions and no easy answers. But hey, that's what makes philosophy so fascinating, right? It forces us to think deeply about these fundamental issues and decide what we truly believe.
Food for thought, for sure. So, listener, what do you think? Where do you stand on the Hobbes versus Locke versus Rousseau debate? Hit us up on social media and let us know. And join us next time for another deep dive into the world of ideas.